The first thing you lose when you take the oath is not your freedom, but your certainty. You swear to protect the truth, but they don't tell you that some truths are predators, and these walls are their cage. My name doesn't matter. My oath does. Or it did. When you are assigned to the Archivum Secretum Apostolicum Vaticano, the secret archives, you imagine yourself a guardian of God's memory, a scribe in the long, silent story of faith. But some memories, I have learned, are not holy. They are prisons. And I am one of the guards. The air in the archives has a weight to it. It's not just the scent of decaying paper and leather. It's the smell of silence questions. Down here, kilometers of shelves stretch into a darkness that feels older than the building itself. The silence is the most unsettling part. It's not empty. It's watchful. You feel the presence of every word ever written, every secret ever kept. My section was designated Precanonical Containment. You will not find it on any map of the archives, not even the ones the cardinals use. It's a vault within a vault, accessible only by a service elevator that requires 2 separate keys and a code that changes daily. My predecessor, a frail man who retired to a silent monastery without a word of farewell, left only one thing in my desk drawer. It was a small, handwritten note on a yellowed card. It said, "Do not catalog what you do not understand. Some doors are meant to hold back the tide." I thought he was a poet or mad. Now, I think he was a prophet. It was in that vault I found the collection. Not holy relics, not the letters of saints. It was a series of lead-lined boxes, each sealed with a wax emblem I had never seen before. A serpent coiled around a key. They held the complete and censored reports from a Jesuit expedition in the early 1600s. Their mission was not to spread the faith. It was retrieval. The manifests listed items that made my blood run cold, objects that felt profane just to read about, a vial of unburning oil, recovered from a tomb that knows no sun, a mirror of polished obsidian that does not reflect a human face, and something that was only referred to as the Osirian heart, which was noted to emit a low, rhythmic hum that caused disorientation and visions in its handlers. These were not the artifacts of a dead religion. They felt like sleeping weapons. The most terrifying file, however, contained no object. It was a single sheet of papyrus, perfectly preserved between 2 plates of heavy, leaded glass. It wasn't a prayer or a history. It was a schematic, a complex, terrifyingly precise diagram of a spiritual machine. It depicted the human body not as a vessel for a soul to be saved, but as a conduit that could be activated. It showed lines of energy flowing from specific star alignments. I recognized Orion's belt, down into the geometric layout of an Egyptian temple, a temple that does not exist on any known map. From there, the energy was channeled into a meditating priest, whose body was shown illuminated from within, light pouring from his eyes and hands, literally reshaping the symbols of the physical world around him. It was a blueprint for a kind of power that didn't require faith, that didn't require a savior, that didn't require a church. It required only knowledge, alignment, and intention. It was a technology of the soul. Attached was a final, desperate letter from the Jesuit general of that time, written in a hand that shook so badly the ink had bled into the paper. "We have taken the key from their door, but the lock remains on ours. We cannot destroy this knowledge, for it is a truth of creation. But we cannot allow it to be known. May God forgive us, for we have not vanquished a demon. We have only hidden the map that shows how to become one." In that moment, the watchful silence of the archives finally made sense. It wasn't the weight of history I felt. It was the pressure of containment. I realized then that my job wasn't to preserve the memory of God. It was to stand guard over a power that could replace him. My job is to make sure the tide never comes in. But every night, I hear the water rising. Most people think holiness is a light, a warmth that fills a room. They are wrong. Holiness is a weight. It is the heaviest thing in the world, and for 30 years, I have been the one who dusts the furniture that bears it. My hands, worn from bleach and polish, have touched the arms of the chairs where encyclicals were planned and the frames of the windows through which popes have watched the world. I see what the prayer books and the television cameras do not. I see the weariness behind the piety, the lonely cup of tea after a day of blessing the masses, the faint scent of antiseptic that clings to old age, no matter how sacred the vessel. I am a ghost in the holiest of houses, and I have learned that even ghosts can see too much. In the Holy Father's private study, among the gilded icons and the leather-bound philosophies, there is a small box. It is made of a dark, heavy wood I do not recognize, a wood that seems to drink the light. It has no lock, no carvings, not even a cross. It is utterly plain, and in a place like this such plainness is a scream. It sits on his desk, next to the silver-framed photograph of his mother. I have my instructions. I am to dust everything. The crucifix, the telephone, the spines of the books, the photograph. But I am never, under any circumstances, to touch the box. Cardinals bring sealed documents. World leaders send ornate gifts. But no one ever touches the box. It is an island of absolute stillness in a river of ceremony. One night, the Holy Father was unwell. A fever had taken hold, and the physician had ordered rest. I was tasked with bringing him a pot of chamomile tea in the late hours. The apostolic palace is different at night. The grandeur falls away, and it becomes a place of long, whispering shadows. As I approached his study, I heard a sound. It was not prayer. I have heard prayer in a dozen languages, in songs and in whispers. This was something else. Through the crack in the door which I had left ajar, I saw him. He was not kneeling at his prie-dieu. He was standing before his desk, holding the small wooden box in both hands. And he was speaking to it. The words were not of this earth. They were guttural, rhythmic, full of long, hissing sounds that scraped the edges of the holy silence. The air in the hallway grew cold, so cold that the steam from the teapot vanished. I looked at the small votive candle burning before a statue of the Madonna down the hall. Its flame didn't flicker. It seemed to shrink, to pull back into itself as if afraid. A pressure began to build inside my head, a deep, resonant thrumming, like a great bell being rung miles underwater. I am a simple woman of faith. I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. But the presence in that room with him, it was not the Father. It was older. It felt patient, immense, and utterly, terrifyingly indifferent to the cross on the wall and the rosary on the desk. It felt like the silence between the stars. After a few minutes that felt like a lifetime, he finished his whisper. He carefully placed the box back in its spot, his hands trembling slightly. Then he turned and made the sign of the cross toward the door, not as a blessing, but like a man locking a cage. He did not look relieved. He looked like a zookeeper who had just fed a lion, knowing that it would be hungry again tomorrow, and that he was the only thing standing between it and the world. I have cleaned his rooms every day since. I still change the linens, I still pour his water, I still dust the photograph of his mother. But I no longer dust the area around that box. I give it a wide berth. My duster, my hands, they do not pass through its shadow. Some things are so heavy with secrets, you are afraid your touch might be the one that makes them spill. I still pray to God for the Holy Father's soul. But now, I also pray that he is strong enough to keep that box closed. I am afraid of what I might wake up. The Church teaches you that the greatest enemy is the one who fell from heaven. They spend years training you to recognize his scent, his tricks, his many names. They give you the rites, the prayers, the holy water, weapons for a war as old as sin. But the most terrifying lesson, the one they never prepare you for, is this: the devil is not the oldest thing to live in the dark. The world thinks our work is a battle of wills, a shouting match with demons named Lucifer or Beelzebub. And sometimes it is. But our true work, the work that is never recorded in the official logs, is not exorcism. It is containment. We are not just priests. We are spiritual janitors, sent to clean up spills of ancient power that have begun to leak into the modern world. The call came on a Tuesday. It was a construction site near the old Appian Way, where they were digging the foundation for a new bank. A ground-penetrating radar had shown an anomaly, a void beneath the earth that wasn't on any city map. The work crew broke through the floor of what they thought was an old cellar and found themselves staring into a sealed chamber. It was not Roman. It was not Christian. The air that rose from it, they said, was dry and still, and carried the scent of ozone and forgotten millennia. I went with my mentor, Father Alistair, a man who had performed over 300 documented exorcisms and whose faith was a fortress. I had seen him face down things that would turn a soldier's hair white. But when we stood at the edge of that broken hole in the earth, he hesitated. The air was charged with a kind of static that made the hairs on my arms stand up. In the center of the chamber, illuminated by the workers' floodlights, was a sarcophagus of black basalt. It was not carved with saints or martyrs, but with hieroglyphs. And they were glowing, not with paint, but with a faint, steady, inner light, a cold golden luminescence that pulsed in time with my own heartbeat. My mentor, a man who had walked into rooms filled with levitating furniture and shrieking blasphemies, refused to take the final step down. His face was pale. He held his rosary so tight his knuckles were white. He turned to me and his voice was a whisper I had never heard from him before. A whisper of pure, undiluted dread. "This is not a demon, my son," he said. "A demon is a fallen thing. It remembers heaven and hates it. This is a risen thing. It remembers a world before heaven and hell ever had names." We were ordered by the congregation to perform the rite of desecration, to cleanse the space, to claim it for Christ. We descended into the chamber, our Latin prayers feeling flimsy and loud in the oppressive silence. The glowing symbols on the sarcophagus seemed to watch us, their light unwavering. Alistair began the rite, his voice echoing off the stone. "Exorcismus te, omnis immundus spiritus." I sprinkled the holy water. When the drops hit the basalt, they didn't hiss like they do on possessed flesh. They simply vanished, absorbed by the stone with no effect at all. The energy in the room didn't flee, it didn't recoil. Simply observed us. It was an intelligence, ancient, vast, and utterly unimpressed. Felt nothing for our faith, our God, our symbols. We were children with toys in the presence of a mountain that had been there since the dawn of time. We finished the rite, but we did not cleanse the chamber. All we did was lock the door on a power we could not comprehend. As we ascended, Alistair stumbled on the last step, and I caught his arm. He looked at me, his eyes wide with a terrible revelation. "The danger was never that hell would rise to meet us," he breathed. "It's that we built our world on top of other heavens, and their gods are still sleeping in the basement." I left that chamber knowing a truth that has haunted my every prayer since. The opposite of God is not the devil. It is something that came before both, something that does not care about our souls, and it is waiting patiently for us to be forgotten. In training, they teach you how to take a bullet for the Holy Father. They teach you the halberd, the SIG 550 rifle, and how to spot a threat in a crowd of 10,000 faithful. They prepare your body for martyrdom. What they don't prepare you for is the silence. They don't teach you what to do when the threat is not a man with a gun, but a door that should never be opened. Our motto is Acreter et Fide Leader, bravely and faithfully. We guard the body of the Pope, but we also guard things far older than the papacy itself. And faith is no shield against what slumbers in the stone beneath your feet. There is a sublevel in the Apostolic Palace known only by its unofficial code name, the Umbraculum, the Place of Shadows. It does not appear on any schematic. Its existence is a whisper passed from one generation of the guard to the next. Access requires 3 separate keys, held by 3 different curial officials, none of whom know the identity of the other 2. The protocol is an iron law, an unbreakable sacrament. No one enters the Umbraculum alone, ever. One winter night, Cardinal Maurer demanded entry. He was a titan of theology, a man famous for his intellect and his biting skepticism of anything that smacked of superstition. He believed the legends of the Umbraculum were fables meant to frighten junior priests. He was investigating historical discrepancies for a new encyclical, he said, a matter of the highest importance. He presented an order, signed by the Holy Father himself, granting him sole access. My commanding officer argued, pleaded. It was a violation of a 400-year-old tradition. But the order was absolute. I was posted at the final door, a single slab of lead-lined steel, cold to the touch even through my gloves. I unlocked the final tumbler, and the cardinal, a man radiating absolute confidence, stepped inside alone. The door sealed behind him with a sound like a tomb closing. He was inside for 4 hours. For the first hour, there was silence. In the second, I heard something through the steel. Faint, rhythmic tapping. In the third hour, I heard a voice, his voice, but he wasn't speaking Latin or Italian or his native German. It was a chaotic, guttural babble, punctuated by long, drawn-out silences. In the final hour, there was nothing, just a complete and total absence of sound. A quiet so profound it felt like a pressure against my ears. When the timer unlocked the door, he stumbled out. He was not the same man who had entered. His face, usually ruddy and alive with intellectual fire, was the color of old ash. His eyes, once sharp and analytical, were wide and vacant, staring at something that was no longer there. His hands trembled so violently he could not sign the exit ledger. He just dropped the pen, leaving a smear of ink on the ancient page. I was ordered to escort him to his vehicle. He was leaning on me, his entire body shaking, his teeth chattering despite the heated corridor. He said nothing the entire way, a silent, broken statue of a man. As I helped him into the back of his sedan, his aide rushed to his side, asking what was wrong, what had he seen. The cardinal looked through him, through me, through the very walls of the Vatican, and he muttered a single sentence. He did not know I understood his native German. "Es ist keine Sammlung," he whispered, his voice a dry rasp. "It is not a collection. Es ist eine Bibliothek. It is a library. Und die Bücher. Die Bücher schreiben sich nach immer selbst. And the books are still writing themselves." He was sent to a recuperative retreat in the Swiss Alps a week later and was never seen in a public role again. His encyclical was never mentioned. We were all debriefed, ordered to forget the incident, to erase it from our memory. But you cannot erase a thing like that. They train you to be brave in the face of assassins and bombs. They do not teach you what to do when you see a man of God, a pillar of faith and reason, look as if he has just seen something that proves his God is not the author of this world, merely a character in a much older, darker story. I still stand my post, but now I know the truth. We are not guarding the Holy Father from the world. We are guarding the world from the things he keeps locked in his basement. The Vatican has 2 gospels. One is written in scripture, meant for the salvation of souls. The other is written in starlight, and its purpose is the containment of gods. For 10 years, I believed my job was to serve the first. I managed the personal correspondence for Cardinal Albinati, a man whose public life was a testament to order and doctrine. I scheduled his audiences, transcribed his letters, and filtered the endless river of information that flowed to his office. My world was one of wax seals, encrypted emails, and the quiet, ceaseless machinery of power. I thought I was a cog in that machine. I was wrong. I was a gatekeeper for a secret I wasn't supposed to understand. Most of the cardinal's correspondence was predictable internal politics, financial reports, theological debates. But once a month, a special courier would arrive. He was not a member of the Swiss Guard or the Vatican Gendarmerie. He was a civilian, always dressed in a simple gray suit, carrying a single, slender briefcase. He would deliver a sealed envelope with no return address, marked only with the sigil of an eagle clutching a key. My instructions were absolute. This envelope was to be given directly to the cardinal, and the single sheet of paper inside was to be burned in a specific brazier after he had read it. For years, I assumed these were intelligence reports, perhaps from the Holy See's diplomatic missions. The truth was infinitely stranger. One evening, the cardinal was called away to an emergency convocation. The courier arrived in his absence. Following protocol, I accepted the envelope and secured it in the cardinal's private safe. But that night, a fire alarm, later dismissed as a faulty sensor, forced an evacuation of our wing. In the brief, chaotic window, I made a choice that dismantled my faith. I opened the safe. I opened the letter. It was not a political brief. It was a single page of technical data, a celestial bulletin. The header read, Specola Vaticana, Progetto Chem. the Vatican Advanced Technology Telescope in Arizona. But the report wasn't about discovering new galaxies or nebulae. The coordinates it listed were not for distant stars, but for the precise alignment of specific star systems, Orion, Sirius, Draco, as viewed from key locations on Earth. The locations weren't Rome or Jerusalem. They were Giza, Karnak, Luxor. This bulletin, however, was flagged with a red border of urgency. It predicted a coming celestial alignment, a convergence of stellar positions that had not occurred in over 2,000 years. It matched, the report noted, an alignment described in a forbidden Egyptian text I had only ever heard whispered about, the Book of the Heavenly Cow, which spoke of the awakening of the sleeper in the deep earth, when the eye of the bull and the dog star looked upon the same stone. Chillingly, the report included a second dataset, a quantum gravitational anomaly reading from a sensor grid located in the Scavae, the necropolis directly beneath the main altar of St. Peter's Basilica. The energy output was, the report read, minuscule but coherent and exhibiting a non-random rhythmic pulse. When the cardinal returned, I handed him the resealed envelope and said nothing. He read it, and the blood drained from his face. He immediately convened a secret meeting with 2 other members of the Curia. From my anteroom, I could not hear every word, but I heard enough. They were not discussing prayer or pilgrimage. Their language had changed. They were discussing strengthening containment protocols. They spoke of the need to increase the liturgical dampening field by scheduling uninterrupted, overlapping masses in the basilica for the 48 hours of the alignment. One of them, his voice tight with fear, asked if the Osirian ward beneath the obelisk was still stable. They were not talking like priests. They were talking like engineers at a failing nuclear reactor. I saw it then with a clarity that felt like a physical blow. The masses, the chants, the billions of prayers offered up in that holy place for centuries. They weren't just for salvation. That was the story for the world. The true purpose was a kind of spiritual technology. It was a shield, a psychic barrier generated by the focused faith of millions, designed to press down on something, to keep it asleep. I realized that the highest levels of the Church are not just concerned with the kingdom of heaven. They are deeply, mortally afraid of what lies dormant in the earth, and have been using the power of our faith not just for our salvation, but as a cage against a power they stole and can no longer control. Every day for 1 billion people, the Pope's voice is a comfort, a steady, measured tone broadcast from the heart of Vatican radio. It is the sound of faith itself. But I have heard another voice, a recording that was never meant to exist, captured on a reel of magnetic tape that should have been burned a half-century ago. And it tells me that the voice we hear in prayer is not the only one that answers. My job was sound. For 15 years, I was an archivist for Vatican Radio, a librarian of audio waves. My world was the climate-controlled hum of the archives, rows upon rows of tape reels holding every homily, every papal address, every Christmas Mass since the 1930s. My task was digitization, transferring the fragile magnetic past onto immortal digital servers. It was methodical, quiet work, a kind of digital monastery, until I found the box. It was a simple cardboard box, mislabeled as Choir Practice Demos, 1971. It had no other markings, no catalog number. Clerical errors happen even here. Inside was a single 7-inch reel of tape. The label on the reel itself was just a date and a single word written in a hurried hand, Audientia, audience. I threaded it onto the deck. I was expecting a forgotten choir session, perhaps some feedback-drenched organ music. I put on my headphones, pressed play, and the silence of the archives was shattered forever. The voice that came through was instantly recognizable, though younger, stronger. It was the voice of Pope John XXII, the good Pope. But he was not addressing a crowd. His voice was tight, strained, and filled with a fear I had never heard in a human being. The recording quality was poor, filled with static, but beneath it, there was an unnerving silence where the ambient noise of a room should have been. He was speaking in Latin, the formal language of exorcism. In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. He began, but his voice trembled. Then I heard the other sound. It wasn't a growl, not a shriek. It was a voice, calm and impossibly ancient, speaking from the same space as the Pope. It was a soft, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate in my own bones, and the language it spoke was like nothing I had ever heard. It was full of clicks and long, tonal vowels, a language that felt older than stone. The Pope's Latin faltered. He was not commanding. He was pleading. Then the other voice spoke again, and this time the words were in flawless archdiocesan Latin. His tone was not angry or demonic. It was patient, like a teacher correcting a slow student. Parvule sacerdos, it said, the sound seeming to come from everywhere at once in my headphones. Little priest, you cast out the fallen. I am not fallen. I am what you were before you gave yourselves names. There was a long silence on the tape, broken only by the Pope's ragged breathing. Then the unthinkable happened. Pope John XCI abandoned the Latin of the Rite. He began to speak in a different tongue, something guttural, frantic, a language of cracked syllables and desperate whispers. A linguist I later consulted in secret identified it as a reconstructed Proto-Aramaic, a language that had not been spoken in thousands of years. He wasn't praying to God. He was using an older magic, a forgotten protocol. He was negotiating. The tape ended abruptly with the sound of something heavy falling. Then silence. I sat there, frozen, the hum of the machine seeming to mock the stillness in the room. I had not discovered a recording of an exorcism. I had discovered a recording of a failed diplomatic summit between our faith and a power that saw our entire religion as a brief passing fad. I reported the tape, of course. I had to. Within an hour, two men I had never seen before, dressed in the simple black suits of the Curia's internal security, arrived. They did not ask questions. They did not speak to my superior. They took the reel, the box, my logbook for the day, and even the machine I had played it on. One of them looked at me, his eyes empty of any emotion, and said, "Your work in the archives is concluded. A new assignment in the Vatican publishing house awaits you. You have a gift for indexing. Be grateful." I am. But every night when I close my eyes, I still hear it. Not the Pope's frightened prayers, but the other voice, calm, patient, and eternal. And I know the truth of this place. The Vatican is not a fortress built to keep the devil out. It is a listening post, a fragile embassy on the shore of a vast, silent ocean, desperately trying to convince the things in the deep that we are still worth speaking to.